So our ultimate performance monitoring tool has an apt name in Windows 10. It's Performance Monitor. In this hands-on lab nugget, let's take a look at this powerful tool. So I have launched the hands-on lab using the link on the main course page, and I'm going to go down to the Cortana area and launch Performance Monitor. Notice if you type performance, if you get anywhere close, you'll see Performance Monitor appears in the list of apps. This is the ultimate tool when it comes to sophisticated performance monitoring. Notice what happens right off the bat. There is a performance node here in the top left that is selected, and it's giving us kind of a system summary of like memory, network interface utilization, physical disk, and at this point, you're not impressed. You're thinking, Anthony, I can get this from Task Manager. I could get this from the Resource Monitor. But when we start exploring this tool, we quickly see the power. Under Monitoring Tools, notice there's this Performance Monitor node. Inside here, by default, they have a counter that is currently being sampled on a 1-second interval for you, and it's percent processor time. So we can use the plus button and we can add a counter for monitoring something extremely specific. Look at this list of options for counters and keep in mind that these are just general categories. So for instance, there's this category called paging file, and if I click this down arrow, it shows me all of the details that we could monitor for the paging file. In this case, it's percent usage and percent usage peak. But if you looked at something more sophisticated like memory and you looked at all the counters that are available, look at all this information that we could add and start monitoring inside of Performance Monitor. By the way, to add one, you would just select it. So let's say we wanted to look at pages per second. We would select it if there's multiple objects, like if you were dealing with multiple CPUs and you were monitoring a CPU, you would select which one you're dealing with. In our case, it's just memory, so there's nothing to choose here. We then say add, and we say OK. And now in this view, we have the percent processor time and the pages per second information. We can uncheck show, and now we're just looking at the pages per second information for memory inside of this display. Very cool. But again, we're kind of thinking, wow, all right, great. So we can add these counters and we can monitor them, but how really is this different? How is it more powerful than the other resource monitoring tools that we've seen? Well, that's when we get into data collector sets. Look at this. Under data collector sets, what Microsoft has done is they have created a couple for us. One's called System Diagnostics, and the other is called System Performance. What they've done is they've gathered up all these important counters together, and they will literally give you health information based on those counters for your system. Let's do this. Let's run one of these. So we'll go ahead and choose the System Diagnostics Data Collector set under System. And right up here is this green Start the Data Collector Set button. So I'll click that, and we just started collecting all this great system diagnostic information. The default runtime on this is 60 seconds. So we need to kill a little time here as the System Diagnostics Data Collector set runs. Where we're going to go to see the results is sure enough under this Reports area. So if we expand the reports, notice there's a System category, and underneath there is the System Diagnostics category, and we can see right here the report that is being generated for us. Notice it's going to be a 60-second collection of data that's going to be put into this report for us. We can print this report. We can export this report for others to examine. So this is extremely powerful stuff. Something else that I want to point out as we're waiting for this report to finish is that clearly there's user-defined reports that you can create. So you can come into the user-defined area, right-click, choose New, Data Collector Set, and you can create your own collector set of those specific parameters that you want to monitor. What would this be great for? This would be great for something we call baselining. If you want a baseline of your Windows 10 performance during, let's say, average usage, you could go ahead and select those parameters that you're interested in, run that report for a certain amount of time, and that would give you a baseline of system performance that you could then compare against times when the machine might be running poorly. Well, guess what? 60 seconds has elapsed, and so our system diagnostics report is ready. I will click on it, and it says, okay, here's when it ran and for how long, and it gives us some informational and warning stuff like we went in and disabled something, the Microsoft wavetable synthesizer in the device manager during one of our earlier labs. So it's telling us, be careful, there's something disabled. There's informational stuff like, you know what? The CPU rating on this system is poor. The gaming graphics is poor. And that's all expected, by the way, because we have a very low-powered hands-on lab system that we're working with. If you scroll down, or if you just go ahead and close this diagnostics portion, notice there's a software configuration portion of the report. It did operating system checks for us. It did security center information gathering for us. It did system service information. It gives us information about the startup programs. So there is just an incredible wealth of information in here about the health of our system. If we wanted to dig in and analyze the CPU information based on processes or services or the system itself, we can go in and we can obtain that information. So this is remarkably powerful data that we get from Performance Monitor. Let me wrap up this demonstration with you, and you can follow along with me by creating your own user-defined report. So we'd go to the user-defined area, we'd right-click, we'd choose New, Data Collector Set, and we'd name ours, whatever, Sample. And notice we can start from an existing template. So we could start from like the System Performance Data Collector Set if we wanted to, and then modify it. Or you can go in and you can manually indicate the exact type of collector set you want. Maybe you want to take some performance counter information. Oh, and look at this. You could even do a performance counter alert. What you're doing here is you're creating a report that will alert you if you go over some threshold. Imagine this for like a software developer. How cool would this be? They're developing a software app and they want to run it on this machine to test it, and they want to know if it starts consuming too much CPU or memory. They could create a data collector set that gives them an alert to that fact. In our example here, we'll just do some performance counters and choose Next. We'll then go in and we will add the specific counters that we want. So, we come in here and we say, okay, as far as the processor goes, we want to test, percent processor performance for all instances of our processors. And we add that one. Then we could come in and we could... I won't get too specific here, but notice there's a logical disk. So we could go in and we could get the disk or percentage disk read time for the C drive, and we could add that parameter. You get the idea. We add those counters that we're interested in, maybe gathering baseline information for. When we're done, we say OK. We see the performance counters that we are going to be logging. We choose the sampling interval. Maybe I want to take information about these parameters every 5 seconds. We say Next. We store this thing in the default location. In this case, that's perflogs admin, and it's called sample. And then we indicate whether or not we need to run this as an administrator or not. Since I am an admin and you are an admin doing this hands-on lab, you don't have to go in and provide credentials as to who would be running this report. You can just run it as yourself. Notice we can start the data collector set and choose finish. And this thing will now start running, and it will run indefinitely since we didn't go into the properties of this and put a stop time of like 60 seconds as we had with the system diagnostics data set that we ran earlier. So this thing would run indefinitely. Obviously, if you want to stop it, that's simple. Just select it and then hit the stop button. Now what you have under the reports area, under the user defined area, is your sample folder. And in that sample folder, you have the custom report that you just created. Notice we have our percent processor performance and percent disk read time, and we can see those graphs in the report. This tool is remarkable. And again, a big buzzword for you in certification would be baselining. This tool is so famous for its ability to baseline performance. So let's wrap up this nugget with a little bit of review, shall we? We think there might be something hogging our CPU, and we want to quickly check that. That's a job for Task Manager. Maybe we're interested in seeing some of the specific metrics when it comes to our disk system, and we don't need anything that fancy. That would be a job for Resource Monitor. If we are interested in really taking a baseline of key performance information regarding our system during a given point in time, or if we're interested in running like a powerful set of system diagnostics that we can check, that would be a job for Performance Monitor. In a certification environment, please be aware of the subtle differences or not so subtle differences in the case of Performance Monitor when it comes to these three different tools. In this nugget, you and I explored the two main things we end up doing with Performance Monitor. Number one, we can add very specific counters so we can see statistical information on what's going on with a very specific performance metric on our device. The other thing that we can do with Performance Monitor is create those data collection sets that are so powerful to give us snapshots of exactly what is going on with a variety of metrics on our system. I hope you found this nugget informative, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.